What in the world happened here with Sikkim Call 40 edition? Make sure you guys smash the living crap out of that subscribe button because there's always something interesting happening within the field of this game. Starting off over here with Spright. Spright actually just, we have the people looking at this deck now because we had a top 8 from a 400-man regional. Yeah, that's right. You can try processing the, but Robbie, Sprite's not meta. Well, I mean, when one of your tech choices is in fact the water barrier statue, of course it's going to work out. This is the thing, right? Like, you can go through all of the little Sprite stuff. You can actually set up a pretty decent board. Having a water barrier statue kind of is like that little end board piece, along with, you know, having access to Totally Awesome. It usually ends up working out, man. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I would not have fun having my opponent set up a Totally Awesome on top of a water barrier statue. Oh, wait, wasn't that exactly what Mermail was doing that was causing some of the problems? Yes. Well, you've got another deck that has fundamentally figured out how to actually do this. So, kind of going forward, I'm not going to say that this is going to be a very strong contender, because I don't think that's necessarily the case. What I think we're looking at here is one of the good scenarios where we're like, oh, hey, you know, this is actually a decent choice, you know. You've also got things like Heat Wave, which is kind of starting to come up a little bit more as a scenario. If you truly want a card to watch, go watch Heat Wave, because the fact that, you know, you can play a totally going second deck, your opponent thinks they're going to counterplay you by making you go first. You're like, ha! I've got the counterplay, and then you just Heat Wave them, and they're just like, sorry, I just wanted to play the game, man. You know, it's quite interesting, honestly. So, yes, Sprite's in the spotlight today just because, you know, more people are hearing about this deck list and starting to come together. We've also got Squirrel, and my entire Discord seems to be very confused about this. Now, let me give you a little bit of a history lesson here in the ancient technology that is the remains of the good old classic Gadget days. For those of you that don't know, I religiously played Gadgets for many a years. And there was a tech choice right here called the little Squirrel that existed way back in the day. And it was something that Justin Delhan came up with. He gets full credit for this, because Squirrel was a card that he pioneered for the deck, because Squirrel says, if this card battles, negate the effects of a monster it battled after damage calculation, including in the graveyard. Now, what was very critically important about this tech piece was any piece like a Gear Armor or something, you could slam this little squirrel into, and the squirrel would just invalidate its effects, which was incredibly important back in that era. And this is 100% an older format-esque buyout. Somebody is realizing, oh crap, you know, this little card that, you know, has only existed as a rare for its entire life actually is an incredibly valuable piece to, you know, actually deconstructing boards and actually allowing you to do things, which is incredibly crazy. It's also a permanent negate, because nowhere on this card does it say until the end phase of the turn, which, if this little squirrel's just bouncing around and doing something, I mean, it can also attack into something too, and obviously, you know, it will probably, you know, end up getting destroyed because it's got 700 tech points. But going into defense mode, monsters all day long, yeah, this monster was a powerhouse, man. We've also got Dark Ruler No More over here. So my Discord has been bringing up the fact that, you know, Dark Ruler No More's, for whatever, you know, listings and quantities of these, starting to look a little bit bare on the market. Now, the reality of the situation is this card's getting reprinted in the Chronicle decks later this week, and that's not going to be much of an issue, honestly. I am quite welcoming to actually see that get a reprint, but that means that, you know, whatever quantities exist in the market right now are going to get flushed out and more are going to enter, which is good. All right, and it's like, if you really are worried about getting Dark Ruler No Mores, pick up 3 Chronicle decks. You're going to have access to the Horus cards. You're going to have access to, you know, Dark Roller, you're going to have a Zombie Vampire reprint. Straight out of that box, I mean, it's not bad value, but in terms of, I guess the one you would want to watch would be the Lost Art. I can't imagine that even the Lost Art's going to go too much, because you've already got, like, still 20 plus listings of the Lart. And it's also, the Lart's not, being attracted to be a reasonable target for people to want to pick up right now. So, I don't know. I understand that, we're shifting into another side of the meta. We're going to start looking at different tech choices that may or may not be considered interesting go-to cards as metas shift around. I mean, it's typically the trend, right? We go into new unexplored waters, and now you kind of got to be like, oh, okay, is this worth it? Do we want to shift around into this different piece of the meta? Will Nibiru be fine? The answer is probably not, but time will tell with this. So, yeah, interesting little movements with that. We've also got the Shooting Quasar Dragon quarter centuries. Now, I'm going to probably go through, probably for a couple market watches, we've got to dig into a lot of these quarter centuries. If you've not been paying attention, which you probably haven't, and I don't blame you for that, because the market is an absolute shit show in certain days. Every quarter century is going to be a viable card to start disappearing from the market. You got to remember, the further that we start to drag our feet away from these quarter centuries, the more that people are going to look at the timer and they're going to go, oh crap, they're starting to go up. They're disappearing. Well, yeah, they're never going to reprint them. You're never going to see these cards, in this rarity again. So whatever, 5-10 years down the line, it's still going to be the same scenario here. So it's like, if you want to get one of these and you want to grade it for collectability, like a Shooting Quasar Dragon, for example, because it's an iconic card. I'm not going to go out and I'm not going to buy, like, some other bad quarter century to try to grade it. No, it's be like, if I like Shooting Quasar Dragons and Boss Monster, get the thing you like, man, and enjoy collecting in this game. I'm also not saying, like, oh boy, he's saying great quarter centuries. No, I'm saying, like, if you like Quasar, which Quasar would be, I think, the only QCR I'd ever want to grade, and I would only grade one of it, because I think the card looks gorgeous. Quasar was always one of my favorite boss monsters in the course of the game, and it took us so long to get this card in the game. And the fact that we actually did get it, I think, was a very welcoming and a nice, exciting thing to actually see. So, kind of keep up with this. It's still very much a beautiful thing, and quarter centuries are going down. It's also Crocea. I gotta plug back in Radiant Typhoon here. We did the Meta Watch over the weekend. We talked about, the Iron Man early results that are floating around on the internet. It's becoming more and more public knowledge now that, we got a hand rip coming up. We've got Radiant Typhoon, which is looking like an absolute powerhouse. Brandon and Draco Tail are both going to be swinging back and forth on whatever variant that they want to play right now. You've got to keep an eye on this Radiant Typhoon stuff, man. I don't think Crocea is going down anytime soon unless they ban Featherstorm. And even if they're going to ban Featherstorm, like, that's a fever dream at this point. To think that Konami's got the foresight, to actually make a decision like that. It's not going to happen at this point in the game. So, if you're kind of questioning, like, why Radiant Typhoon is good, go do some research. Go look into all of the OCG deck list and meta reports that we were doing over the last couple months. There was so much info on Radiant Typhoon to make this deck look like a monster that you guys will see why. Alright, so that is all I've got for today. My head feels like a spinning bowl of magma, and, it's just another day in the office, it appears. So please, leave a comment down below, tell me what you guys think. I'm super excited to see, more people being confused by which idea is doing good today. Bye-bye! Patrons! Thank you!
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.